The stars burned cold and distant as Commander Yuna stood before the massive viewing window of the flagship. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. Everyone knew what had happened 3 days ago. Everyone knew why the fleet now drifted without direction in the endless black of space. Admiral Kang was dead. He had led the human fleet for 40 years. Under his command, the Star Dragons had fought beside humanity against every threat that came from the darkness between galaxies. The old man had earned their respect through blood and fire. He had bonded with them in ways that no one fully understood. Now he was gone, and everything was falling apart. Yuna turned away from the window. She was 32 years old, too young for this burden. Her dark hair was tied back tight, and her uniform felt heavy on her shoulders. She had served as second in command for 5 years. She knew every ship in the fleet, every crew member by name, every battle plan in the database. But none of that mattered to the Dragons. "Commander," called Lieutenant Hana from her station. Her voice was careful, almost afraid. "The Dragon Masters are requesting your presence in the bonding chamber again." Yuna closed her eyes. This would be the 4th time today. 4 times she had walked into that ancient room carved from asteroid stone. 4 times she had stood before the Star Dragons and offered herself as their new leader. 4 times they had turned away from her. "Tell them I am coming," she said. The walk to the bonding chamber took 10 minutes through the flagship's winding corridors. Yuna passed crew members who stopped to bow their heads in respect. She saw the fear in their eyes. Without the Dragons, the human fleet was just metal and fire. Strong, yes, but not strong enough. The Void Swarm was coming. Reports had reached them 2 weeks ago. A massive wave of the creatures was moving through the outer systems, eating everything in their path. Planets, moons, stations, nothing survived their hunger. The swarm would reach human territory in 3 months, maybe less. Only the Star Dragons could stop them. Only their ancient fire could burn through the swarm's endless numbers. But the Dragons would not fight for a leader they did not accept. The bonding chamber doors opened with a deep groan. Yuna stepped inside and felt the temperature drop. The room was vast, carved from the heart of a captured asteroid centuries ago. Strange crystals grew from the walls, giving off a soft blue light. The ceiling disappeared into shadow far above, and there, filling most of the chamber, were the Dragons. 12 of them remained. Once there had been hundreds, but wars and time had taken their toll. These 12 were the last of their kind in human space, massive creatures of scale and fire, each one larger than a warship. Their bodies shifted with colors that had no names in human language. Their eyes held the light of dying stars. Dragon Master June stood at the center of the room, his old face lined with worry. He had spent his entire life studying these creatures. He knew their ways better than anyone alive. "Commander," he said quietly, "they are watching." Yuna walked forward. Her boots echoed on the stone floor. She stopped in the traditional place, the spot where every fleet commander had stood for generations. She looked up at the Dragons and tried to show no fear. "I am Yuna," she said, her voice strong and clear. "I am the new commander of the human fleet. I ask for your partnership. I ask for your fire. Together, we will face the darkness." Silence filled the chamber. The Dragons did not move. They did not speak, for they had no voices that humans could hear. But Yuna felt their judgment pressing against her mind like cold water. They were testing her, searching her soul for something. Whatever they sought, they did not find it. One by one, the Dragons turned their great heads away. They shifted their massive bodies, presenting their backs to her. The message was clear. They did not accept her. They would not follow her. Yuna felt her heart sink, but she did not let it show on her face. A commander could not show weakness, not even when everything was crumbling. "Thank you for your time," she said formally, and turned to leave. Dragon Master June followed her out. In the corridor, away from the watching eyes of the crew, his careful composure broke. "I do not understand," he said, shaking his head. "You are qualified. You are brave. You have led successful missions. Why do they reject you?" Yuna kept walking. "Perhaps they still mourn Admiral Kang. They have accepted new leaders before, after other commanders died. It usually takes only days." June hurried to keep up with her long strides. "This is different. They are not just mourning, they are... waiting." "Waiting for what?" "I do not know." Yuna stopped at a window that looked out over the dragon hangar. Below, she could see the specialized docking areas where the great creatures rested between battles. Technicians moved among them like ants beside mountains, checking the bonding equipment, maintaining the feeding systems. "The swarm will not wait," she said quietly. "We need the dragons. Without them, we cannot protect the colonies. Millions of people will die." June stood beside her, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "There is one dragon you have not faced yet." Yuna's jaw tightened. "Beck." "Yes." She had avoided thinking about him. Beck was the oldest of the star dragons, the most powerful and the most dangerous. He had not accepted a rider in over 300 years. The last human who tried to bond with him had died from the mental pressure alone. "Beck rejected Admiral Kang when he first became commander," Yuna said. "He has rejected every leader since the founding of the fleet." "But the other dragons follow his lead," June replied. "They always have. If Beck accepted you, the others would follow." "And if he kills me in the attempt?" June had no answer for that. Yuna stared at her reflection for a long moment. She thought about the colonies waiting for protection. She thought about the children who would never grow up if the swarm reached them. She thought about what it meant to be a leader. "Prepare the deep chamber," she said finally. "I will face Beck tomorrow." June's face went pale. "Commander, the risk is mine to take." She turned and met his eyes. "If I am not worthy of leading this fleet, then the dragons are right to reject me. But I will not hide from the test. I will not let fear decide our future." She walked away, leaving June standing alone by the window. Behind her, deep in the heart of the ship, she could feel something stirring. The dragons were watching, always watching. And somewhere in the darkness of the deep chamber, Beck was waiting too. Tomorrow would decide everything. Tomorrow she would either earn the dragon's respect or die trying. There was no third option. The stars continued to burn cold and distant, and the void swarm drew closer with every passing hour. The rescue ship found the destroyed colony vessel drifting near the edge of the system. It had been torn apart by something terrible, the hull ripped open like paper, the engines cold and dead. Bodies floated in the wreckage, frozen and silent. No one expected to find survivors. Rescue team leader Day moved through the broken corridors with his crew, their lights cutting through the darkness. They had done this work many times before. They knew what death looked like, how it smelled, how it felt in the air. This ship was a grave, nothing more. "Check the lower sections," Day ordered through his helmet radio. "Look for any sealed compartments." His team spread out. Their boots made no sound in the airless space. They moved past sleeping quarters filled with frozen belongings, photographs, toys, personal items that would never be claimed. The colony ship had been carrying 3,000 people to a new world, a fresh start, a better life. The void swarm had found them first. Day was about to call off the search when his scanner beeped, a life sign, weak but present, coming from somewhere below. He followed the signal down through twisted metal and broken walls. The damage grew worse as he descended. Whatever had attacked this ship had focused its hunger on the center, working outward. The lower cargo holds had been partly spared. The signal led him to a small maintenance closet. The door was sealed tight, welded shut from the inside by clumsy hands. Someone had known what was coming. Someone had hidden. Day cut through the door with his tool. When it fell away, his light revealed a tiny space packed with emergency supplies, water containers, food packets, a small heater running on its last power cell. And in the corner, wrapped in every blanket he could find, was a boy. He looked about 12 years old. His dark hair was dirty and long. His face was thin from hunger, his eyes hollow from things no child should see. But he was breathing. He was alive. "Hello?" Day said softly, removing his helmet so the boy could see a human face. "You are safe now. What is your name?" The boy stared at him for a long moment. His lips moved, cracked and dry. "Tay," he whispered. "My name is Tay." They brought him to the flagship. Tay said little during the journey. He ate when food was given to him. He drank when water was offered. But his eyes stayed distant, looking at something far away that no one else could see. The medical team examined him and found no serious injuries. His body was weak but recovering. His mind was another matter. The doctors said he was in shock. They said it might take weeks or months for him to come back to himself. They said to be patient. Commander Yuna visited him in the medical bay on his second day aboard. She stood by his bed and looked down at the small figure wrapped in white sheets. He seemed so fragile, so lost. "You are the only survivor," she told him gently. "I am sorry. We searched the entire ship." Tay did not respond. His eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. "You will be safe here," Yuna continued. "We will take care of you until we can find your relatives." No response. Yuna sighed and turned to leave. She had her own problems to face. Her meeting with Bayek was in 2 hours, and she might not survive it. But something made her stop at the door. "You were very brave," she said without looking back. "Whatever you saw, whatever happened, you found a way to survive. That takes strength. Remember that." She left. Tay continued staring at the ceiling. But something had changed behind his empty eyes. A small spark, perhaps. A tiny light in the darkness. Over the next few days, Tay began to move around the medical bay. He did not speak much, but he watched everything. He studied the doctors and nurses as they worked. He looked out the small window at the stars. One night, when the lights were dim and most of the staff had gone, Tay climbed out of his bed. His bare feet made no sound on the cold floor. He walked to the door and found it unlocked. The doctors had decided he was not a danger to himself anymore. The corridors of the flagship were quiet. Most of the crew slept during these hours. Tay wandered without direction, letting his feet carry him wherever they wanted to go. He passed through the crew quarters, the mess halls, the recreation areas. Everything was clean and orderly and full of people he did not know. He kept walking. The ship was massive, easy to get lost in. Tay did not mind. He had been lost before. Lost in the dark of that maintenance closet, listening to his parents die somewhere above him. Lost in the silence that followed, counting the days until his food ran out. Being lost was familiar now. After an hour of walking, he found himself in a section of the ship that felt different. The walls here were darker, made of something that looked like natural stone instead of metal. The air was warmer, almost alive. Strange sounds echoed from somewhere ahead. Deep breathing, shifting weight, the click of something hard against rock. A sign on the wall said, "Restricted area, authorized personnel only." Tay walked past it. The corridor opened into a massive space that took his breath away. It was a cavern carved from solid rock, lit by crystals that glowed with soft blue fire. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it, and the dragons were there. Tay had heard stories about star dragons, but stories could not prepare him for the reality. They were enormous, each one larger than any creature he had ever imagined. Their scales shifted with colors that seemed to move like living things. Their eyes glowed with inner light. Most of them were sleeping, their huge bodies curled up like giant cats. A few were awake, watching him with curiosity. Tay felt their attention like pressure on his skin. He should have been afraid. Any normal person would have run. But Tay had already faced the worst fear of his life. He had already lost everything. What was left to be afraid of? He walked forward, his bare feet silent on the warm stone. One of the smaller dragons lifted its head. It was still massive, bigger than a house, but young compared to the others. Its scales were a deep blue that faded to silver at the edges. Its eyes were gold, watching Tay with something that might have been wonder. Tay stopped a few meters away and sat down on the floor. He crossed his legs and looked up at the dragon. "Hello?" he said quietly. "I am Tay." The dragon tilted its head, considering him. "I do not have anywhere else to go," Tay continued. "Is it okay if I stay here for a while?" The dragon made a low sound deep in its throat. Not threatening, more like agreement. It lowered its head back down and closed its eyes. Tay sat in the warmth of the dragon hangar, surrounded by the breathing of ancient creatures, and for the first time since his world ended, he felt something like peace. He did not know it yet, but his small journey through the ship had been noticed. The dragons had felt him coming. They had let him pass, and somewhere in the deepest part of the hangar, in a private chamber carved from the oldest stone, Beck had opened one enormous eye. The ancient dragon had felt something stir, something new, something that had not walked these halls in a very long time. He would wait and watch. Dragons were good at waiting. The boy would return. Beck was certain of it. And when he did, everything would change. Commander Yuna survived her meeting with Beck, but only barely. She woke in the medical bay 3 days later with Dragon Master June sitting by her bed. Her head felt like it had been split open and filled with fire. Every muscle in her body ached. But she was alive. "What happened?" she asked, her voice rough and weak. June's face was heavy with sadness. "Beck rejected you, Commander. When you tried to initiate the bonding, he pushed back. The mental force nearly killed you." Yuna closed her eyes. She had felt it, that moment when the ancient dragon's mind touched hers. It was like standing before a sun. Too bright, too powerful, too old. She was nothing to him, just another human trying to claim something she did not deserve. "The others?" she asked, still refusing. "They saw what Bayek did to you. They know what it means." June paused. "The crew is afraid, Commander. Word has spread. They say the dragons have abandoned us." Yuna forced herself to sit up, ignoring the pain that shot through her body. "Then we will find another way to fight the swarm. We still have weapons. We still have ships." "It will not be enough. You know this." She did know, but what else could she do? While Yuna recovered, Tay returned to the dragon hangar. He came every night, slipping away from his assigned quarters in the crew section. The guards had stopped watching him closely. He was just a quiet orphan boy, no threat to anyone. They did not know about his secret visits. The dragons accepted his presence. This was strange enough that some of the technicians who worked the night shift began to notice. They reported it to Dragon Master June, who came to observe. He found Tay sitting near the young blue dragon, talking quietly about nothing in particular. The boy spoke about his old home, his parents, the dreams he used to have about exploring space. The dragon listened with half-closed eyes, its great head resting on the stone floor just meters away from the small human. "Remarkable," June whispered to himself. "The dragons barely tolerate our presence. But this child—" He did not interfere. He simply watched and made notes. On the 5th night, something different happened. Ty had finished his quiet conversation with the blue dragon and was preparing to leave when he felt something. A pull, a calling. It came from the back of the hangar, from the private chamber that none of the technicians ever entered. Back's chamber. Tay should have ignored it. He should have gone back to his bed and forgotten the strange feeling. But something inside him needed to know what was calling. He walked past the other dragons, past the maintenance areas, past the warning signs that grew larger and more serious. The air became hotter. The light from the crystals dimmed, replaced by something deeper, a red glow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The entrance to Beck's chamber was a tunnel carved through solid rock. It was wide enough for the massive dragon to pass through, which meant Tay looked like an ant entering the home of a giant. He walked in anyway. The chamber inside was ancient. Tay could feel the weight of centuries pressing down on him. The walls were covered with marks, scratch patterns, burned scars, symbols in languages that had been dead for thousands of years. This was not just a resting place. This was a throne room, and on a raised platform of black stone, Beck waited. He was enormous. The other dragons were large, but Beck was something else entirely. His body could have held a small building. His scales were the color of deep space, black that seemed to swallow light, scattered with points of silver that looked like stars. His eyes were two pools of ancient fire, gold and orange and red swirling together. Those eyes were fixed on Tay. The boy stopped at the edge of the platform. He felt the dragon's attention like standing in the path of a storm. The power was overwhelming. Most humans would have fallen to their knees. Many would have simply fainted. Tay looked up at the ancient creature and felt curiosity. "Hello?" he said. "I am Tay." The dragon did not move. Its eyes continued to burn into him. "The other dragons let me visit them," Tay continued. "I did not know if you wanted company, but something told me to come here, so I came." Still no response. But Beck did not attack either. Did not try to push the boy away with mental force. Simply watched with those impossible eyes. Tay sat down on the warm stone floor, crossing his legs like he did with the other dragons. He looked up at Bayek without fear. "I know you are the oldest," he said. "I heard the technicians talking. They say you have been alive for thousands of years. They say you watched humans take their first steps into space." Bayek's eyes narrowed slightly. Still watching. "That must be lonely," Tay said quietly. "Watching everyone around you change and die while you stay the same. My grandmother told me about loneliness once. She said it was the heaviest thing in the universe, heavier than stars." Something shifted in the chamber. The air pressure changed. Beck's massive head lowered slowly, coming down until it was almost level with Tay. The dragon's breath washed over the boy, hot and ancient, smelling of fire and time. Tay did not move. "I am lonely too," he admitted. "My family is gone. My home is gone. Everyone I knew is gone. Sometimes I think I am the only person left in the universe, even when I am surrounded by people." Beck made a sound. It was low and deep, more felt than heard, a vibration that passed through the stone and into Ty's bones. It was not a threat. It was recognition. The ancient dragon understood. "They want you to accept their commander," Tay said. "They need you to help fight the swarm. I heard people talking about it." He tilted his head, looking at Beck with curious eyes. "Why do you refuse?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Beck did something he hadn't done in 300 years. He spoke. Not with words. Dragons didn't have voices for human speech, but images flooded into Tay's mind, memories, feelings. Centuries of experience compressed into moments of understanding. Tay saw battles fought in the darkness between stars. He saw dragons and humans fighting together against horrors from beyond known space. He saw trust built over generations, bonds formed in fire and sacrifice. He saw Bayek's last rider, a young man with kind eyes and a brave heart. He saw their bond, deep as any love. He saw the battle where that rider died, saving a colony of millions from destruction. He felt Bayek's grief, an ocean of it, a wound that had never healed in 300 years, and he understood. "You are not rejecting them because they are weak," Tay whispered, tears running down his face without him noticing. "You are afraid, afraid to love again, afraid to lose again." Beck's eyes closed slowly. Tay stood up. He walked forward until he could reach out and touch the dragon's massive snout. The scales were warm under his small hand, warm like sunlight, warm like memory. "I know what it feels like to lose everything," he said. "It hurts so much you think you will never be whole again. But hiding from the world does not make the pain go away. It just makes you alone." He pressed his forehead against the dragon's scales. "We do not have to be alone anymore," he whispered. "Either of us." The ancient dragon's breath caught. Something cracked in that timeless heart, a wall built from centuries of grief. It did not fall completely, not yet, but a door opened, a small door, just big enough for one orphan boy to step through. Back's eyes opened again, and for the first time in 300 years, they held something other than sorrow. They held hope. Tay stayed in the chamber until morning, curled up against the ancient dragon's side. And when the technicians found him there, sound asleep in the most dangerous place on the ship, they could not believe what they were seeing. Beck was watching over him, protecting him. The most feared dragon in the fleet had become the guardian of a single human child. Word spread quickly. By noon, everyone on the ship knew. Something impossible had happened, something wonderful, something that might just save them all. The days that followed were unlike anything the fleet had seen in generations. Tay moved into a small room built just outside Bayek's chamber. The engineers worked through the night to make it, creating a comfortable space where the boy could sleep and live while staying close to the ancient dragon. No one ordered this to happen. The crew simply understood that separating them was not an option. Dragon Master June visited daily, watching the strange relationship develop with amazed eyes. He had studied dragons his entire life. He had read every historical record, examined every artifact, interviewed every living expert. Nothing had prepared him for this. "The boy has no special abilities," he reported to Commander Yuna. "No genetic markers we associate with dragon bonding. No telepathic potential. He is completely ordinary in every measurable way." Yuna sat behind her desk, still recovering from her encounter with Bayek. Her head ached constantly now, a reminder of the dragon's rejection. "Then how do you explain what is happening?" "I cannot explain it." June shook his head slowly. "The best I can offer is a theory. The dragons have always chosen their riders based on strength, mental strength, spiritual strength, the ability to match their power. But perhaps strength is not what Bayek has been searching for all these years." "What then?" "Understanding." June paused, choosing his words carefully. "The boy lost everything. His family, his home, his entire world. He carries grief that would break most adults. And instead of letting that grief turn to anger or despair, he transformed it into compassion. He saw Beck not as a weapon or a resource, but as a fellow being in pain." Yuna looked out her window at the stars. "Empathy." Yes, the most human quality of all. In Bayek's chamber, Tay continued his daily visits with the ancient dragon. He brought food from the mess hall, his own rations, which he shared despite being told it was unnecessary. Dragons did not eat human food, but Bayek accepted the offerings anyway, consuming them with careful gentleness. "My mother used to make something like this," Tay said one evening, holding up a small cake. "Not exactly the same, but close. She would bake them on special days, birthdays, holidays, The first day of school. Beck's great head rested on the stone floor, his eyes half closed as he listened. The dragon had not spoken again through images since that first night, but Tay could feel his attention, feel his interest. "I used to complain about them," Tay admitted with a sad smile. "I wanted the fancy cakes from the stores, the ones with colorful frosting and plastic decorations. I told her the homemade ones were embarrassing." He broke off a piece and held it up, looking at it in the blue crystal light. "I would give anything to taste her cakes again, to tell her I was sorry, to tell her I loved them." Bayek made that low sound again, the vibration that passed through stone and bone. Understanding. Shared sorrow. "Do you miss your rider?" Tay asked softly. "The one who died?" Images flooded his mind again, brief flashes this time, carefully controlled. A young man laughing, the same man standing proud in a commander's uniform, the feeling of flying together through stars, two souls sharing one purpose, then darkness, loss, the empty years that followed. Tay wiped his eyes. What was his name? One word formed in his mind, placed there gently by the ancient dragon. Sue. Sue, Tay repeated out loud. "That is a good name." He leaned against Bayek's massive side, feeling the warmth of those ageless scales. The dragon's slow heartbeat echoed through his body like distant thunder. "Tell me about him," Tay said. "Tell me everything." And Beck did. Through images and feelings, the ancient dragon shared 300 years of memories, not just of Sue, but of all the riders who had come before. Dozens of them across the centuries, each one unique, each one loved. Beck showed Ty how bonds were formed, how dragons and humans learned to think as one. He showed the battles they had fought, the worlds they had saved, the sacrifices they had made. It was too much for one night, too much for 1 week. The sharing stretched across many days, filling the quiet hours when Ty sat in the warm chamber. Slowly, piece by piece, the boy came to understand what it truly meant to be connected to a star dragon, and Beck came to understand Tay. The dragon saw the boy's memories too, not taken, but offered. Tay showed him his life before the attack. His parents, who worked as farmers on the colony ship, growing food in the hydroponic gardens. His small room with its collection of model ships. His dreams of becoming a pilot someday. He showed the attack, the screaming alarms. His father pushing him into the maintenance closet, sealing the door with desperate hands. The sounds that came after, the silence that was worse. He showed the days of waiting in the dark, the fear, the loneliness. The moment when he decided he would not give up, because giving up would mean his parents' sacrifice was for nothing. Beck saw all of it, and something in the ancient dragon's heart began to heal. Dragon Master June recorded everything, filling reports that grew longer each day. He observed changes in Bayek's behavior, small things at first. The dragon began moving around the chamber more, showing energy he had not displayed in decades. His scales seemed brighter, his eyes more alert. Then came the larger changes. Other dragons started visiting Beck's chamber. This had not happened in living memory. They came one at a time, approaching with the careful respect that the eldest always received. And each time they found Tay there, the small human sitting peacefully beside their leader. The dragons did not speak to Tay directly, but they no longer turned away when he looked at them. They watched him with something new in their ancient eyes. Curiosity, interest, acceptance. "Something is happening," June told Commander Yuna. "The social structure of the entire flight is shifting. Beck is waking up, and the others are following his lead." "Does this mean they will fight?" Yuna asked. "The swarm is now 2 months away. We need to know if we have a chance." "I do not know yet. The bonding between Ty and Bayek is incomplete. They share thoughts and memories. but they have not formed a true combat link. Such things take time. Time we do not have. June nodded slowly. There may be another way. If Bayek accepts you as commander, the other dragons will follow. That has always been the tradition. He rejected me, nearly killed me. That was before Tai. The boy has changed something fundamental in Bayek. Perhaps now. Yuna shook her head. I will not risk it. Not yet. We need more time to understand what is happening. But time was running out. Reports came in from the outer systems. The swarm was moving faster than expected. Colonies were evacuating in panic. Ships fled toward the core worlds, hoping the fleet would save them. The pressure mounted daily. Yuna made speeches to keep morale up. She ordered defensive preparations, weapon upgrades, evacuation drills, everything that could be done without the dragons. It was not enough. Everyone knew it. And in his chamber, surrounded by the quiet presence of the most powerful creature in the fleet, Tay felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. They need you, he said to Bayek one night. They need all of you. People are going to die if you do not help. Bayek's eyes opened fully, fixed on the small human with their depths of fire and wisdom. I know you are scared. I know you do not want to lose anyone again. Tay stood up and faced the ancient dragon directly. But hiding from loss means hiding from everything, including love, including hope, including the chance to make things better. He put his hand on Bayek's snout, the gesture that had become familiar between them. You taught me that, he said. Through all those memories you shared, every rider you lost, you mourned them, but you also celebrated them. Their lives mattered because you let them in. The pain you feel now is the price of that love, and love is worth any price. Beck was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the ancient dragon rose to his full height. His wings, massive things that had not spread in 300 years, unfurled in the chamber. They stretched from wall to wall, blocking out the crystal light, casting Tai in shadow. But it was not a frightening shadow. It was protective. Safe. Beck looked down at the small orphan boy who had walked into his lonely world and changed everything. And for the first time in centuries, the greatest star dragon prepared to rejoin the living. The summons came at dawn. Commander Yuna was in her quarters reviewing the latest reports on swarm movement when Lieutenant Hana's voice crackled through the communication system. Commander, Dragon Master June requests your immediate presence in the main bonding chamber. He says it is urgent. Yuna was already moving before the message finished. She ran through the corridors, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. Something had changed. She could feel it in the air, in the way the crew members she passed looked at her with wide eyes. The bonding chamber doors were already open when she arrived. Blue crystal light spilled out into the corridor, brighter than she remembered. And the sound. She could hear something new, a deep humming that seemed to come from everywhere at once. She stepped inside and stopped. All 12 dragons were present. Not sleeping, not turned away, but standing at full attention in a great circle around the chamber. Their scales glowed with inner fire. Their eyes burned with purpose. The air itself seemed alive with their combined presence. And in the center of the circle, standing small but unafraid, was Tay. Beside him, filling nearly a quarter of the massive chamber, was Beck. The ancient dragon had transformed. His scales, which had been dull with centuries of grief, now blazed with the colors of deep space, black and silver and hints of impossible purple. His wings were spread wide, catching the crystal light. His eyes burned with the fire of 1,000 stars. Dragon Master June stood at the edge of the circle, tears running down his weathered face. He looked at Yuna and could only shake his head in wonder. Tay saw her and smiled. It was the first real smile anyone had seen from him since his rescue. A child's smile, full of hope and warmth. "Commander Yuna," he said, his young voice clear in the vast chamber. "Beck wants to talk to you. All of them do." Yuna walked forward slowly. She passed between two of the younger dragons, who lowered their heads in respect as she moved. Her footsteps echoed on the ancient stone. She stopped before Beck, looking up at the greatest of all star dragons, the creature who had nearly killed her with a thought just weeks ago. The ancient being who had rejected every leader for 300 years. "I am here," she said simply. Beck's head lowered until his massive eye was level with her face. She could see herself reflected in that pool of fire, small and fragile but standing firm. Images flooded her mind, not violent this time, not overwhelming, gentle, controlled, guided by a presence that felt both ancient and somehow new. She saw what Tay had shown the dragon, the memories of loss and grief, the courage to keep going anyway, the choice to love despite the certainty of pain. She saw what Beck had learned from a 12-year-old orphan boy, the lesson that an ancient creature wise beyond measure had somehow forgotten over the centuries. Strength was not the absence of fear. Strength was not power or authority or control. Strength was the courage to be vulnerable, to open your heart knowing it might be broken, to reach out to others even when the world had given you every reason to hide. Humans had this strength. It was woven into their very nature. This impossible capacity for hope in the face of despair, love in the face of loss, connection in the face of loneliness. Beck had watched humanity for thousands of years. He had bonded with their greatest warriors, their most powerful minds. But he had never truly understood them until a small, grieving boy sat down beside him and offered to share his pain. The images faded. Yuna found herself gasping, her face wet with tears she did not remember crying. Beck straightened to his full height. He spread his wings wide, and then, slowly, with the weight of centuries behind the gesture, he lowered his head to the ground before Commander Yuna. The other dragons followed. One by one, the ancient creatures bowed, not to power, not to authority, but to the leader of the species that had reminded them what it meant to be alive. Yuna stood in the center of kneeling dragons, overwhelmed. She looked at Tay, who grinned at her from his place beside Beck. "They accept you," he said. "All of them. They are ready to fight." Dragon Master June fell to his knees, sobbing with joy. Around the chamber, crew members who had gathered at the doors broke into cheers. The sound echoed through the halls, spreading through the ship like wildfire. The dragons had returned. In the weeks that followed, the fleet prepared for war with new energy. Dragons and pilots began forming bonds, real bonds, the kind that had not been created in decades. Young officers who had never dreamed of riding discovered they had the capacity. Veterans who had given up hope found themselves chosen. Beck did not take a rider. He was too old, too powerful, too unique to bond fully with any human mind. But he no longer needed one. He had Tay. The boy could not ride him into battle. He was too young, too small, and the bonding between them was not that kind of connection. But Tay could communicate with the ancient dragon in ways no one else could. He became a bridge between Beck and the fleet, translating the dragon's wisdom into words that humans could understand. Commander Yuna often found herself seeking their counsel. She would sit in Bayek's chamber, listening as Tai explained complex battle strategies that came from thousands of years of experience. The boy did not always understand everything he was sharing, but he passed it along faithfully. "Beck says the swarm moves like water," Tay reported one evening. "They flow around obstacles instead of crashing into them. We should not try to block them with a wall of ships. We should create channels. Guide them where we want them to go." Yuna nodded, making notes on her tablet. "That matches what our analysts have been suggesting. How does he recommend we create these channels? Tay closed his eyes, communing with the dragon in that silent way they had developed. Fire. Dragon fire can burn for hours in space if you know how to shape it. The swarm fears fire more than anything else. We can create burning barriers that will push them toward our killing zones. It was brilliant. Ancient wisdom combined with modern tactics. The battle plans took shape over weeks of careful preparation. When the Void Swarm finally arrived, the human fleet was ready. The battle lasted for 3 days. It was the largest conflict in human history. Millions of swarm creatures against 12 dragons and 1,000 ships. The darkness between stars lit up with fire and fury. Beck led the dragons personally, something he had not done in 300 years. His flames burned hotter than any of the younger dragons, cutting through swarm formations like a blade through paper. The other dragons followed his lead, working together with a coordination that amazed the human commanders. And on the flagship, safe from the fighting but connected to everything through his bond with Bayek, Tay guided the ancient dragon with love and trust. He could not control Bayek, no one could. But he could support him, encourage him, remind him that he was not alone anymore. When the last of the swarm fled back into the darkness, the fleet erupted in celebration. Planets were saved, millions of lives were protected. The threat that had seemed unstoppable had been turned back. Commander Yuna stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the dragons return from battle. They moved through space like creatures of living fire, beautiful and terrible and alive. She found Tay in the observation deck, his face pressed against the glass, watching Bayek approach. "You saved us all," she told him. "None of this would have been possible without you." Tay shook his head. "I did not do anything special. I just saw a lonely creature and wanted to be his friend. That is all." "That is everything," Yuna said softly. "That is what makes humanity special. We reach out. We connect. We refuse to let grief and fear destroy our capacity for love." She knelt beside him so their eyes were level. "You taught an ancient dragon to hope again. You reminded him why humans were worth fighting for. That is no small thing, Tay. That is a miracle." Tay looked back out the window. Bake had reached the ship now, his massive form docking with the dragon hangar. Even from this distance, Tay could feel the connection between them, warm and strong and permanent. "He taught me too," the boy said. "He taught me that losing people you love does not mean love is a mistake. It means love is real, and real things leave marks when they are gone, marks that prove they mattered." Yuna smiled, her eyes wet. "Your parents would be very proud of you." "I know," Tay said simply. "Beck helped me understand that. He helped me see that they are still with me even now. They always will be." The fleet began its long journey home. Worlds that had feared destruction now celebrated survival. The story of what had happened spread across human space. The tale of an orphan boy and an ancient dragon, of grief transformed into hope, of the impossible power of simple kindness. In his chamber on the flagship, Beck rested after battle. Tay sat beside him as always, sharing warmth and companionship. The ancient dragon had lived for thousands of years. He had seen empires rise and fall, watched stars be born and die. He had lost more than any living creature could imagine. But for the first time in 3 centuries, he was not alone. And that, in the end, was the most human thing of all. The stars no longer burned cold and distant. Now they burned with the fire of hope, hope that had been kindled in the most unlikely of places by the smallest and bravest of hearts. This was humanity's gift to the universe, not strength, not power, not technology, connection, and it would burn forever.